My story is one unfortunate that's far too common. I was targeted by a sexual predator through my mother. In other words, he romanced my mother to get to me. My mother was an alcoholic. She was pregnant at 17. She came from a family that was rife with abuse. She herself had been molested by her own father and had gotten pregnant and given birth to a boy who was known as my uncle. So my mother had a very chaotic lifestyle. And this predator came in and he pretended to be the answer to our prayers. He took us to sporting events. He gave my mother gifts. We thought he was a great guy. Then after about 3 months, he began to molest me. And the way he kept my silence is that he threatened my mother's life. And as those of us who come from dysfunctional backgrounds really can tell you, it doesn't matter how big a train wreck your parents are as a child, you do whatever you can to protect your parents. So once he had my silence secured and he'd been molesting me, 3 months later he began using me for child pornography. Then about 3 months after that, he introduced me to the pedophile ring he belonged to. And my introduction to the pedophile ring was being raped and molested by all 10 members. The first time I was actually trafficked, I was 5 years old, and I was handcuffed to a truck stop bathroom, and I was actually raped by a procession of 5 men and 1 woman. I was given drugs and alcohol to make me more compliant with the people that were going to rape me. And this would go on for a period of 7 years, and I tried to tell a total of 10 people during that time. During that time period, and this is very common, especially with kids who are being trafficked. You're just exploited on every level. We were used for child exploitation videos, child exploitation photos. We were also, sold to numerous individuals who they themselves would use it for child exploitation videos and for photos, and pretty much do whatever they want. So it was a really horrific environment that we were kind of passed around in, and it was just a bottomless pit from which there was no escape. There were about 20 to 30 kids, I think, that were involved in this particular ring. Again, it expanded nationally, internationally. A lot of the child exploitation videos and photos that were taken by the group itself were sent to the Netherlands and to Germany. There was a big trade going on in terms of exploitation videos and photos of kids. And so there were so many individuals who were being actually trafficked. Now, I was trafficked during the 1960s and 1970s, so there was a huge influx of kids being bought in from other countries like Vietnam who were being exploited as well. They actually did catch them, but unfortunately, because they had gotten so powerful and had so many connections. One of the things that they did was blackmail individuals. They would have people who were high-ranking officials, politicians, judges, whatever, and they would bring them in and they would videotape them secretly and use that to blackmail them. So they had a lot of power. So they pretty much got off, without any repercussions. And this happens quite frequently in cases where children are exploited. There's so many powerful people involved that they never truly brought to justice. Absolutely. That's a great question. Yes, definitely were signs. I speak often about, one of the depraved things that these individuals who paid to rape me really were into was they would get sexually aroused by choking a child unconscious. So I would oftentimes go into school with finger marks around my neck where they had been choking me, and I would button up my collar. So there were definitely signs for my teachers. Also, one of the things that happens even today in child trafficking, I was picked up by different people after school. I was in school at the time. I was trafficking, so I was picked up by numerous people. I was absent quite frequently, but I was trafficked after school on holidays. So there were a lot of signs that were there. And one of the people that I tried to tell what was happening was one of my teachers, and that teacher began molesting me. So essentially, during that time period, I was filled with such hopelessness because I felt like that there was no escape for me. So I just suffered so greatly, and I just hoped and prayed for a way out of what was happening to me. one of the techniques that's used by human traffickers is that they give you a fake identity. And at one point during the time I was being trafficked, I was given a fake identity and I didn't respond to the name I was given quickly enough. So I was taught a lesson. I mean, I was thrown to the ground and I was kicked in the ribs by the leader of the pedophile ring. So I ended up in the emergency room with 3 bruised ribs. And while I was in the exam room with the doctor, my trafficker stepped out to smoke a cigarette. And I whispered in the doctor's ear, that they were hurting me. They were letting people do bad things to me. And the doctor kind of nodded his head. But what I discovered was that the trafficker had told the doctor that I was attention-seeking, melodramatic, and accident-prone. So I ended up back in that same ER 3 hours later with 3 broken ribs because the doctor told the trafficker exactly what I said, and so they broke through 3 of my ribs to teach me a lesson about not speaking out. So there were many, many cases that of people who, I crossed their path that could have stopped what was happening to me, but nobody did. During that time period, especially, and this was the late 60s to early 70s, there was no awareness, and they just pretty much labeled me as a troublemaker, as one of these, kids that was always in trouble and just never told the truth. So nobody really heard or saw the signs that I was a child that was being, raped and molested and trafficked all over the country. I just went on for 7 years, age of 5 to the age of 12. After I had tried to tell the doctor and I tried to tell, the teacher. Now, one of the things that that happened was, I had a little sister, and they began to use her as leverage over me. They would say, they were going to start trafficking her, they were going to murder her. And I used to sleep at the foot of her bed, so I would get molested instead of her. So this went on until the age of 12. And at 12, I was just so filled with hopelessness and felt like, nothing was going to stop what was happening to me. I went to my mother's medicine cabinet. I got a bottle of sleeping pills. I went to the liquor cabinet. I got a bottle of vodka. And I went to my mother's favorite rose garden, which, she cared more about the roses than she did me. And I sat down on the warm earth. I put the pills in my mouth and I washed them down with the vodka and I laid down. And I felt a sense of peace wash over me for the first time in my life. Then I saw, what I describe as a bright light. And I heard a voice speak to me that said, your time on earth isn't done. I want you to go back and fight for every child who's suffering as you have. Then in hindsight and reflecting, I realized this was the voice of my friend Steve, was a young African-American boy who at the age of 5, I saw murdered in front of me. He was choked to death by the leader of the pedophile ring. And I woke up in the emergency room to a group of wide-eyed doctors. I'd been gone for about 3 minutes. And it was only because a nurse who was present there noticed the signs of what was happening to me. And I remember hearing her argue with the doctors about doing something. And I remember the doctor saying things about all the paperwork they would have to do. But that nurse dug her heels in and would not let them, go without helping me. So it's because of her that I'm here today. And that's why I thank all nurses. So at that point, I finally came to the attention of, social services that, that something was going on and I needed help. The problem that we see, and this is a problem I can tell you from personal experience with men and boys who are trafficked, it's ego. I mean, men are just not equipped to accept or come to grips with the fact that they are powerless and they are vulnerable and they can be victims. And I would not be here for today if it wasn't for a female survivor who taught me that I could be a man and have been victimized as a child and have been powerless and able to stop this. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I was a 25, 30-pound child with a 250-pound man. So it took a lot for me to come to grips with that whole concept that I could be a victim. So it's all about overcoming that toxic masculinity and getting men who are victims to express their emotions, admit they were victims, And I really hope that, through my advocacy and through my speaking, that I can be a beacon to those men who are victims, and to have them break their silence and speak out and realize that, there is no shame in being a victim, because, it wasn't your fault. It's not your fault at all. And the other event in my life that really just healed me so dramatically was, is the birth of my children, because, they're the ones that teach me about unconditional love every day. And I'm so thankful, for my wife and my family and the healing they've given to me. I think, again, and we're very fortunate here in Florida that we have state mandated education in public schools. So I think that educating in the public school system. But another modality which has been incredibly effective is, if you go into middle and high school and you actually teach healthy relationship, seminars, do classes on healthy relationships, because what you find is that, and I'll vouch for this, I mean, a lot of kids don't understand that what's happening to them is wrong. I mean, it kind of becomes your normal. So when you go into schools, to public schools, and you teach kids, this is what a healthy relationship is like, then these kids can really identify that they're victims. And there's been more disclosures during these healthy relationship trainings than any other time. So again, it's about going in and letting these kids know, what kind of love they deserve, but also, going in and letting them know they're not alone, that someone out there, cares about them, and that, that they will be listened to, and that their voice matters. Because I think a lot of times what you find, especially with teenagers and other kids, is that they feel like, no one really cares what's happening to them. So I think if we go in and just let them know that we do care, and use survivors, as role models for speaking out, I think that can make an incredible difference. I had tried to join the special forces when I was 16, but they wouldn't let me because I wasn't old enough. So when I was 17, I was able to, sober up my mother enough to get her to sign for me to join the Marine Corps. And, it was just one of the most amazing experiences in my life, because one of the things, especially about the Marine Corps, is that, once you graduate, I went to Paris Island. Once you graduate from Marine Corps boot camp, you have a brand new family. So what happened is that, I not only got a sense of pride, a new sense of identity from the Marine Corps, but I got a brand new family. And so, again, one of the Marine Corps mottos is no one left behind. So I had, all these brothers and sisters, that looked out for me. So it was just an amazing experience, and to have that sense of pride of being a United States Marine. And I was able to serve my country and really have, a sense of purpose and a sense of worth. And it just gave me the ability also to attend college. So I was incredibly thankful to be able to do that. And definitely, in my work as an advocate, I think that it's really given me that drive to be able to, continue doing this work and really advocate for as many people as possible. And it's given me in the military are survivors of child abuse or trauma. So, I was just so thankful to be able to have that experience and to be able to, to meet so many people in the Marine Corps who had survived trauma in childhood. And I actually had the privilege, I spoke at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina a couple of years ago, and I spoke about, about trafficking and abuse. But I also had the opportunity to actually talk to so many young Marines who come back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and just really give them an ear and let them know that I was there to listen and help in any way I could. So the Marine Corps definitely has been such a driving force in me being an advocate and being able to do so much in terms of stopping child exploitation around the globe. One of the unfortunate things about being a military is that, when you're stationed on a military base, I mean, everybody knows that on the 1st or the 15th, you're going to have a lot of cash in your pocket. So that really, sets you up as a target, not only for human traffickers, but for any unscrupulous person. I remember, in particular, used car dealers, people in bars. So you're really just kind of marked in that sense by people who are looking to take your paycheck away. And I can remember several instances during my service where I pulled Marines out of situations where they had gotten involved with a human trafficker, and I really felt life was at risk. So they had to pull them out of these situations and get away from these people, because I know in one instance, they were arguing with a trafficker over the fact that they had hit a young woman. Again, I think in the military, we're proud to serve our country, but we're also, just so vulnerable in so many ways that people don't acknowledge. So I think, again, having the education and awareness and getting people to understand, the dangers that exist, not only in combat but also off base, is so critical. And I think, again, getting people, armed with the awareness so they won't be targeted by human traffickers and others can really make such a difference in the life of a young man and young woman serving in the military. Having that education and awareness is really key. But one of the things I've been really proud of is, I worked with the Boys and Girls Club of America on a manual for their facilities to help recognize kids who would potentially be victims. But I think having some sort of after school activity, a place where kids can go, instead of being latchkey kids, where they carry the key around their neck, but having a place to go after school where they can actually feel like they belong, maybe get some training, have some activities, but really just give kids a place where they can actually feel like they're cared about and they matter. I think that really can be a game changer, especially we talk about dysfunctional families where kids feel like they're worthless, like in my situation. So I think again, and helping those single parents, especially in the military, by making sure that their kids are cared for by competent and trustworthy individuals, so they don't have to worry about them. But I think having a place for kids where they can go and kind of hang out and not wander around and actually be victimized by human traffickers. But I think, again, having that awareness and giving parents that knowledge. Because, if you look at, especially now during the pandemic, statistically, most kids who are targeted through chat rooms. And most kids who are in chat rooms are ones who feel like, they don't belong. They don't have anybody that they can hang out with. So I think giving kids an alternative to that, where they can actually, go to a place and feel accepted and feel wanted, can really be a game changer in terms of them becoming victims. There are so many single parent families and families out there who really love their children, but lack the means to support them in a healthy way. So again, I think it's a matter of offering single parents and parents job training, rent vouchers. Let's lift them up to a point where they can care for their children in a way they really want to. So I think that if we can offer that help to parents, including drug and alcohol counseling, child care, and just give them an avenue to escape what they're trapped in. So I think, again, if we can offer them assistance and help in that way, I think it can make a really big difference. But again, I think, in my mother's case, unfortunately, her demons were really, really big. They were really strong. And I think she, again, used alcohol to self-medicate and deal with her own abuse. So I think if we can offer, counseling, give people access to mental health services, and that's paid for, that's free. Because one of the big barriers, of course, is that counseling can be very expensive. So having services available, especially in military settings, for family members, that's covered and they have access, but also having support groups for parents who are struggling so they don't feel alone. So I think those are definitely ways that we can begin to address that problem. I'm very fortunate, very honored. I'm a special advisor to the Utah Attorney General. I was also recently appointed to the Organization for Security and Economic Cooperation in Europe, their Office of Democratic Institution and Human Rights, um, uh, International Survivors of Human Trafficking Advisory Council. And so I've done some amazing work already with the OSCE, and that, I had the opportunity. I spent a week training, law enforcement judges and prosecutors in Ukraine about how to recognize, victims of child exploitation, and also how to help victims of exploitation testify in court. So I was very pleased to give them that knowledge. And based on my work in Ukraine, the work actually progressed from just an idea into actually becoming a law in that country. So I've been very, very pleased to actually have that come to fruition. So it's been incredibly nice to do that work. And then based on my work in Ukraine, by word of mouth, I was actually requested by Uzbekistan to come in and do training in Uzbekistan. So I was very pleased to train law enforcement judges and prosecutors in Uzbekistan on how to recognize children who are exploited or trafficked, and how to prevent them, help prevent children from becoming victims, and how to help them testify in court. I think we're making incredible progress. I've had the great honor to work with members of Congress on legislation, and I think we're making great progress. And in the pandemic, kind of put a new wrinkle in that. So I think we've been adapting to how human trafficking and child exploitation is working during the pandemic. One of the unfortunate side effects of the pandemic is that now that children have been in lockdown. They're no longer seen by adults in their life that recognize signs of abuse. I mean, typically you'd have teachers, social workers, or others who would come in contact with a child and could easily recognize, that they were actually being abused, and then step in to do something about that. So children have become more isolated during the pandemic. But I think again, we continue to make great strides in awareness and educating parents and others, and actually bringing about laws that punish traffickers and keep them from victimizing other children. I mean, I was incredibly honored to be part of the coalition of advocates, survivor advocates, congressmen and women, nonprofits that lobbied Congress to amend the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, that shut down the world's largest online brothel, Backpage.com. I think we have a lot more work to do. I think one of the great struggles we have at this point is awareness of what we call domestic minor sex trafficking, because I think people have a hard time, understanding how kids in the U.S. are trafficked, how kids domestically are trafficked. So again, we need to just continue raising awareness about that, and the risk that exists for kids who can be targeted by human traffickers, especially online. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has seen a 106% increase in CSAM, which is child sex abuse material, online since March of this year, or March of the pandemic. Europol has seen a doubling of child abuse material that's available online. So it severely impacted victims of human trafficking. We've also seen an explosion of human trafficking with regards to people in these camps overseas, these refugee camps, because COVID has been running wild in these refugee camps. So people are fleeing these refugee camps only to be scooped up by human traffickers, and human traffickers have set up flotillas offshore to scoop up, like the Rohingya have set up flotillas to scoop them up and begin to traffic them. Then I also wanted to go back to a point related to the military. Now, I actually have met several people who were actually trafficked while they were in the military. And so, again, you can be a target in the military of human trafficking, where your individuals, were working off base, which some people do, and they were targeted by human traffickers, and then they were actually sold while they were in the military. So again, as someone serving your country, you can also be victimized in so many ways, and it's important to empower and educate everyone in the military and their dependents on, how they can be exploited, how to look for the signs, and how to take action if they see it happening to their family members or someone they know.